Hi everybody. In this video we're going to do the intro, all three verses, and their variations to Over the Mountain. But before we jump into it, one thing I have to kind of talk about here is I've watched a lot of the videos and heard a lot of the people talking about the tuning, and Randy said that he had an issue with the tuning machine when he was tuning up for this song. For those of you, not that I want to date myself, but for those of you that know how those old tape machines used to work, if one tape machine started to get worn and the belts got worn, it started to play a little bit slower. So if you recorded something on the slow machine and then transferred to another tape machine, which they did studio to studio back then, drums in one studio, guitars in another, and they played it on a newer machine that the belts weren't worn, then everything's slightly faster. So this song, which I'll show you, I'm going to do right from the book. You're going to see that it was intended to be the E flat to E flat tuning, and Randy's guitar probably was perfectly in tune. It was the tape machine issue. So it's not drop D, it's not D to D or anything like that. If you tune this, if you go to the intro and you get that first G sharp, which we're going to jump into in a second, and you tune your guitar actually to the CD, and then you put your guitar back in a tuner, you're going to see that the low E, and the rest of the strings for that matter, are going to be somewhere between E flat and E. I know this is kind of a strange thing, but if you want to play along with the CD and actually be in tune with it, that's the weird issue that everybody has. So as you can hear, my guitar's in tune with itself. Even though we're going to use this weird tuning. So I'm going to give you that tuning right now, and then we can jump into this. Low E. A. D. B. High E. Okay, now that we've taken care of the tuning issue, we're going to jump into the intro here. The first thing that you're going to see, and the tab should be up on the screen there for you, the 0-7, which is going to be the same note if you listen to both. It's going to start with that. The second chord that you're going to play is going to be 5-7, which is going to be your A power chord, which is going to be A and E. So here's what you have so far. I actually used my pinky, in case you're wondering. Next chord is going to be the G sharp chord, which is going to be 4 and 6, which is going to give you G sharp and D sharp. So the way that this is counted, if you look at the tab up there, the intro actually starts with the drums for the first measure, first 3 beats of the second measure. So every time you do, you're counting 4 and back to the G sharp is actually your 1. And there's a slight hesitation where there's one note that would have been there before he jumps into the actual 16ths. So here it is slow. Slight pause, but because the song's so fast you almost can't hear it, but Randy does that. He gets 2 notes in there before he jumps into the 16th notes. So for the next 3 beats of the very first measure, you have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a. So you get 3 of them. That'll complete the 4-beat measure. Here it is slow. We're starting on 4 and. That's the first measure. Second measure is going to continue with the 16th notes for 3 beats, and then again 4 and you're back to the 1. And that continues 4 times. At the end of the 4th time, coming all the way through that, Randy jumps up and does this cool little octave thing. It's going to be on the D string, 9th fret, which is going to give you the note B, and the 12th fret on the B string, which is also B. And he just simply slides 1 fret backwards. You just completed the intro. Get that one under your fingers. Get the kind of groove to it. Now you'll notice when Randy gets this up to speed, he gets that kind of thump because he's accenting the one. Some people I've actually seen do it, and I feel like you can kind of hear it depending on the stereo you're listening to, but you'll hear almost that kind of groove, even though it's just a single note. Maybe he did it in another track and it's further in the mix. You never know with Randy, but for the sake of what we're doing and through this book, it's just going to be the single note as it continues on. So now we're going to move into the actual verse. The first verse is probably the easiest out of the three because there are no variations. The first half of this verse are going to be repeated in the second and third verse, and then they have their variations. So let's get started, try and make some sense out of this. The very first verse is going to start out with your 16 notes, again on that G sharp note. First measure, 4 beats. You have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Pretty straightforward. The second measure is going to be 3 beats of 16 notes, and on the beat 4, he's going to add a chord. So you're going to have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, and a chord. Have a chord. The chord that you're going to hear on that is actually the C sharp chord, which is going to be 4 and 6, which is going to give you C sharp and G sharp. So here's what you have. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4. So here's the first 2 measures, or the first half of the verse. Pretty simple to get through. There's definitely a groove and a feel to this when you play along with the song. It's a lot easier to do with the actual song up to tempo than it is slow. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's kind of true. Alright, so the next 2 measures of the verse are going to be same kind of idea. The first measure is going to be 4 beats of 16 notes, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then the next measure, the last and final measure, there's going to be this really cool fill. Now what Randy's doing here, we're going to start on the low E string and play 4, 7, which is going to give you G sharp and B. A string is going to be the 6th fret, which is going to be D sharp. D string, which is going to be the 4th fret, which is going to be F sharp. Then the next thing you're going to do is on the G and B string, you're going to grab this double stop on the 4th fret, which is going to be B and D sharp. He hammers on to the E, and then he's going to slide this whole double stop up 1 whole step to the 6th and 7th fret, which is going to be C sharp and F sharp. So here's what you have slow. And you'll recognize this fill when it's up to speed. Pretty cool stuff. So you put all that together and you have 4 measures. That is the entire first verse. So let's trim it up a little bit. First measure out of the 4 is 4 beats of 16 notes. Second measure is going to be 3 beats of 16 and a chord. Next measure is going to be back to the 4 beats of 16 notes. And then the very last measure is going to be the fill. That is your entire first verse. Now, for the second and third verses, the very first 2 measures that we just did in the first verse are going to stay the same. They're going to stay exactly the same. So you have 4 beats of 16. The next measure, the second measure, is going to be 3 beats of 16 and a chord. And here's where it changes. Randy starts adding this double stop on the top, which is going to be on the 7th fret of your B and your E string, which is going to give you F sharp and B. You're going to recognize this. If you've learned Diary of a Madman, he does that a lot. He likes that sound. So anyway, the next one. So second half of verse 2 is going to have this variation. We're going to count this out. It should be on your screen. So you're going to have 2 beats of 16. And then he's going to add the double stop. After that, you're going to get 2 more 16th notes because he's finishing that beat. And then you have 4 more 16th notes to finish the measure. 1, and that's the first measure. Second measure is going to start with the double stop, the 2 notes below it, and the 4 after it as well. Back to the double stop. You get 2 more 16th notes, and then he gets a chord in there. So that's 2 measures. And here it is, first 2 measures, one more time. 1, and 2, and 3, and 40, and measure 2 starts with 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. All right, let's do the last 2 measures of the variation. It's going to start again with 2 beats of 16s. 1, and 2, and back to the double stop. 2 more 16th notes, and then 4 more 16th notes to finish the last beat. 4. Now the second measure, the last measure, is going to be the actual fill again. You're going to do that whole thing one more time, but the second time you get to the ending, it's actually going to do the double stop, then the fill, minus the first note. So here's the second fill. And that's the whole variation for verse 2. Verse 3, same thing as the first half of your first verse. And now the variation, this one's going to be a little bit different. It's a lot faster as well. Not tempo-wise, but the double stops show up quicker in the pattern, which you're about to see. So this one starts with 1 beat of 16th notes. 1 beat and double stop. Then you get your and then you're going to do another 4 16s for beat 3. 3 and double stop. Last 2 16 notes. That finishes your first measure. Second measure is going to start again with 1 beat of 16s. 1 and which is the beginning of 2, and 3, and 4. That'll make a little more sense when you see the tab, if you're not already looking at it. The last 2 measures, 1 beat and double stop, 2 16s, and then another beat for beat 3 of 16s, 4 of them, 3 and double stop, 2 more 16s. Now the last measure of this, the second time, does the fill again. That completes first, second, and third verse. I hope I went through this nice and clear for you. Take it slow, play it along with the song, and enjoy. See you in the next video.